FAA Powerplant ignition and starting systems. Question: the constrained gap igniter plug used in some gas turbine engines operates at a cooler temperature because the construction is such that the spark occurs beyond the face of the combustion chamber liner. Question: when removing a shielded spark plug, which of the following is most likely to be damaged? Core insulator. Question: why do turbine engine ignition systems require high energy? To ignite the fuel under conditions of high altitude and low temperatures. Question: if it is found that a shielded ignition system does not adequately reduce ignition noise, it may be necessary to install a filter between the Magneto and Magneto switch. Question: the purpose of staggered ignition is to compensate for diluted fuel-air mixture around exhaust valve. Question: in a low-tension ignition system, each spark plug requires an individual secondary coil. Question: when will the voltage in the secondary winding of a magneto installed on a normally operating engine be at its highest value? Just prior to spark plug firing. Question: a defective primary capacitor in a magneto is indicated by burned and pitted breaker points. Question: the term reach, as applied to spark plug design and or type, indicates the linear distance from the shell gasket seat to the end of the threads on the shell skirt. Question: magneto timing drift is caused by erosion of the breaker points and wear of the cam followers. Question: which of the following breaker point characteristics is associated with a faulty capacitor? Coarse grained. Question: which of the following would be cause for rejection of a spark plug? Insulator tip cracked. Question: shielding is used on spark plug and ignition wires to prevent interference with radio reception. Question: what likely effect would a cracked distributor rotor have on a magneto? Ground the secondary circuit through the crack. Question: what is the difference between a low tension and a high tension engine ignition system? A low tension system uses a transformer coil near the spark plugs to boost voltage, while the high tension system voltage is constant from the magneto to the spark plugs. Question: in a typical starter generator system, under which of the following starting circumstances may it be necessary to use the start-stop button? Hung start. Question: aircraft magneto housings are usually ventilated in order to provide cooling, and remove corrosive gases produced by normal arcing. Question: what is the approximate position of the rotating magnet in a high-tension magneto when the points first close? Full register. Question: spark plug fouling caused by lead deposits occurs most often when cylinder head temperatures are relatively low. Question: great caution should be exercised in handling damaged, hermetically sealed turbine engine igniter transformer units because some contain radioactive material. Question: the numbers appearing on the ignition distributor block indicate the sparking order of the distributor. Question: when does battery current flow through the primary circuit of a battery ignition coil? When the breaker points are closed and the ignition switch is on. Question: which of the following statements regarding magneto switch circuits is not true? In the both position, the right and left magneto circuits are grounded. Question: pneumatic starters are usually designed with what types of airflow impingement systems? Radial inward flow turbine and axial flow turbine. Question: when timing a magneto internally, the alignment of the timing marks indicates that the magnets are in the E-gap position. Question: which of the following are included in a typical turbine engine ignition system? 2 igniter plugs, 1 exciter unit, and 2 high-tension igniter leads. Question: magneto pole shoes are generally made of laminations of high-grade soft iron. Question: a spark plug's heat range is the result of its ability to transfer heat from the firing end of the spark plug to the cylinder head. Question: how does the ignition system of a gas turbine engine differ from that of a reciprocating engine? A high-energy spark is required for ignition. Question: a magneto ignition switch is connected parallel to the breaker points. Question: the spark occurs at the spark plug when the ignition's primary circuit is broken. Question: which of the following are distinct circuits of a high-tension magneto? Magnetic, primary, and secondary. Question: why are turbine engine igniters less susceptible to fouling than reciprocating engine spark plugs? The high-intensity spark cleans the igniter. Question: when referring to Figure 5, when an external power source is connected to the aircraft, the battery cannot be connected to the bus. Question: what is the relationship between distributor and crankshaft speed of aircraft reciprocating engines? The distributor turns at 1/2 crankshaft speed. Question: the primary advantage of pneumatic air turbine starters over comparable electrical starters for turbine engines is its power to rate ratio. Question: in the aircraft magneto system, if the P lead is disconnected, the magneto will be on, regardless of ignition switch position. Question: the E-gap angle is usually defined as the number of degrees between the neutral position of the rotating magnet and the position where the contact points open. Question: when internally timing a magneto, the breaker points begin to open when the magnet poles are a few degrees beyond the neutral position. Question: magneto breaker points must be timed to open when greatest magnetic field stress exists in the magnetic circuit. Question: generally, when removing a turbine engine igniter plug, in order to eliminate the possibility of the technician receiving a lethal shock, the ignition switch is turned off and the igniter lead is disconnected from the plug and the center electrode grounded to the engine after disconnecting the transformer exciter input lead and waiting the prescribed time. Question: spark plug heat range is determined by its ability to transfer heat to the cylinder head. Question: thermocouples are usually inserted or installed on the hottest cylinder of the engine. Question: which of the following could cause damage to the nose ceramic or to the electrode of an aircraft spark plug? Improper gapping procedure. Question: when performing a magneto ground check on an engine, correct operation is indicated by a slight drop in RPM. Question: if the ground wire of a magneto is disconnected at the ignition system, the result will be the engine will not stop running when the ignition switch is turned off. Question: the capacitor type ignition system is used almost universally on turbine engines primarily because of its high voltage and high heat intensity. Question: capacitance after firing in most modern spark plugs is reduced by the use of a built-in resistor in each plug. Question: the magnetic circuit of a magneto consists of a permanent multi-pole rotating magnet. The core is made of soft iron. Question: inspection of pneumatic starters by maintenance technicians usually includes checking the oil level and magnetic drain plug condition. Question: in a turbine engine DC capacitor discharge ignition system, where are the high voltage pulses formed? At the triggering transformer. Question: What would be the result if a Magneto breaker point mainspring did not have sufficient tension? The points will float or bounce. Question. When testing a Magneto distributor block for electrical leakage, which of the following pieces of test equipment should be used? A high-tension harness tester. Question. Using a cold spark plug in a high-compression aircraft engine would probably result in normal operation. Question. What components make up the magnetic system of a magneto? Rotating magnet, the pole shoes, the pole shoe extensions, and the coil core. Question. Magneto breaker point opening relative to the position of the rotating magnet and distributor rotor can be set most accurately during assembly of the magneto before installation on the engine. Question. The purpose of an undercurrent relay in a starter generator system is to disconnect power from the starter generator and ignition when sufficient engine speed is reached. Question. Spark plugs are considered worn out when electrodes have worn away to about 1/2 of their original dimensions. Question. What is the purpose of a safety gap in some magnetos? To discharge the secondary coil's voltage if an open occurs in the secondary circuit. Question. At what RPM is a reciprocating engine ignition switch checkmate? The slowest possible RPM. Question. What component of a dual magneto is shared by both ignition systems? Rotating magnet. Question. Ignition check during engine run-up indicates excessive RPM drop during operation on the right magneto. The major portion of the RPM loss occurs rapidly after switching to the right magneto position. The most likely cause of this is faulty or fouled spark plugs. Question. The amount of voltage generated in any magneto secondary coil is determined by the number of windings and by the rate of collapse of the magnetic field around the primary coil. Question. The secondary coil of a magneto is grounded through the primary coil. Question. In a high-tension ignition system, the current in the magneto's secondary winding is induced when the primary circuit is interrupted. Question. Referring to Figure 5, which malfunctions will allow the igniters to operate when tested but be inoperative during a start attempt? Wire 10 is broken and or the ignition relay is inoperative. Question. Alignment of the marks provided for internal timing of a magneto indicates that the magneto is in E-gap position. Question. A clicking sound heard at engine coast down in a pneumatic starter incorporating a Sprag clutch ratchet assembly is an indication of the pawls recontacting and riding on the ratchet gear. Question. The greatest density of flux lines in the magnetic circuit of a rotating magnet-type magneto occurs when the magnet is in what position? Full alignment with the field shoe faces. Question. A safety feature usually employed in pneumatic starters that is used if the clutch does not release from the engine drive at the proper time during start is the drive shaft shear point. Failure of an engine. Question. Failure of an engine to cease firing after turning the magneto switch off is an indication of an open P lead to ground. Question. What is a result of flashover in a distributor? Conductive carbon trail. Question. The type of ignition system used on most turbine aircraft engines is capacitor discharge. Question. In an aircraft ignition system, one of the functions of the capacitor is to facilitate a more rapid collapse of the magnetic field in the primary coil. Question. The spark is produced in a magneto ignition system when the breaker points are beginning to open. Question. Why are some tension ignition cables frequently routed from the distributors to the spark plugs in flexible metallic conduits? To reduce the effect of the high-frequency electromagnetic waves emanated during operation. Question. How many secondary coils are required in a low-tension ignition system on an 18-cylinder aircraft engine? 36. Question. What will be the effect if the spark plugs are gapped too wide? Hard starting. Question. Upon inspection of the spark plugs in an aircraft engine, the plugs were found caked with a heavy black soot. This indicates a rich mixture. Question. What will be the result of increasing the gap of the breaker points in a magneto? Advance the spark and decrease its intensity. Question. When installing a magneto on an engine, the piston in cylinder 1 must be a prescribed number of degrees before top center on the compression stroke. Question. In order to turn a magneto off, the primary circuit must be grounded. Refer to Figure 5. Question. If wire 8 is broken or disconnected after starter rotation is initiated and the power lever is advanced, the starting sequence will continue normally. Question. When a magneto is operating, what is the probable cause for a shift in internal timing? The cam follower wear and or the breaker points wear. Question. Refer to Figure 5. The type of system depicted is capable of operating with either battery or external power. Question. In reference to a shower of sparks ignition system, Statement 1. The retard breaking points are designed to keep the affected ignition system operating if the advanced breaker points should fail during normal engine operation. Statement 2. The timed opening of the retard breaker points is designed to prevent engine kickback during start. Regarding the above statements, only Statement 2 is true. Question. When the ignition switch of a single reciprocating engine aircraft is turned to the off position, the primary circuits of both magnetos are grounded. Question. In a high-tension igniter system, a primary capacitor of too low a capacity will cause the breaker contacts to burn. Question. The purpose of a safety gap in a magneto is to protect the high voltage winding from damage. Question. When the switch is off in a battery ignition system, the primary circuit is opened. Question. If a spark plug lead becomes grounded, the magneto will not be affected. Question. What should be used to clean grease or carbon tracks from capacitors or coils that are used in magnetos? Acetone. Question. What is the radial location of the two north poles of a 4-pole rotating magnet in a high-tension magneto? 180 degrees apart. Question. How is the strength of a magnetomagnet checked? Hold the points open and check the output of the primary coil with an AC ammeter while operating the magneto at a specified speed. Question. Defective spark plugs will cause the engine to run rough at all speeds. Question. What will be the result of using too hot a spark plug? Pre-ignition. Question. A spark plug is fouled when its spark grounds without jumping electrodes. Question. What is the purpose of using an impulse coupling with a magneto? To produce a momentary high rotational speed of the magneto. Question. Refer to Figure 5. Which malfunctions will allow the igniters to operate normally during start, but be inoperable when tested? Wire 14 or 15 is broken. Question. What are two parts of a distributor in an aircraft engine ignition system? Block and rotor. Question. If new breaker points are installed in a magneto and on an engine, it will be necessary to time the magneto internally and the magneto to the engine. Question. Air turbine starters are generally designed so that reduction gear distress or damage may be detected by inspection of a magnetic chip detector. Question: how does high tension ignition shielding tend to reduce radio interference? Receives and grounds high frequency waves coming from the magneto and high tension ignition leads. Question: refer to Figure 5. With power applied to the bus bar, what wire supplies standby power to the starter relay contact? 4. Question: when using an electric starter motor, current usage is highest at the start of motor rotation. Question: advantages of dual ignition in aircraft engines include providing a backup magneto system, increasing the output power of the engine, and increasing the output power of the engine. Question: capacitance after firing of a spark plug is caused by the stored energy in the ignition shielded lead unloading after normal timed ignition. Question: igniter plugs used in turbine engines have a long service life because they do not require continuous operation. Question: when a shower of sparks ignition system is activated at an engine start, a spark plug fires only while both the retard and advance breaker positions are open. Question: what is the electrical location of the primary capacitor in a high-tension magneto? In parallel with the breaker points. Question: a safety feature usually employed in direct cranking starters that is used to prevent the starter from reaching burst speed is the stator nozzle design that chokes airflow and stabilizes turbine wheel speed. Question: Statement 1. The platinum and iridium ground electrodes used on fine wire spark plugs are extremely brittle and can be broken if they are improperly handled or adjusted. Statement 2. When gapping massive electrode spark plugs, a wire gauge should be inserted between the center and ground electrodes while moving the ground electrode in order to avoid setting the gap too close. Regarding the above statements, only statement 1 is true. Question: if an aircraft ignition switch is turned off and the engine continues to run normally, the trouble is probably caused by an open ground lead in the magneto. Question: how are most radial engine spark plug wires connected to the distributor block? By use of cable piercing screws. Question: airflow to the pneumatic starter from a ground unit is normally prevented from causing starter overspeed during engine start by activation of a flyweight cutout switch. Question: the electrical circuit from the spark plug back to the magneto is completed by grounding through The engine structure. Question. In a 4-stroke cycle aircraft engine, when does the ignition event take place? Before the piston reaches TDC, top dead center, on the compression stroke. Question. Which statement is correct regarding the ignition system of a turbine engine? The system is normally de-energized as soon as the engine starts. Question. As an aircraft engine's speed is increased, the voltage induced in the primary coil of the magneto increases. Question. When using a timing light to time a magneto to an aircraft engine, the magneto switch should be placed in the both position. Question. Hot spark plugs are generally used in aircraft power plants with comparatively low operating temperatures. Question. Sharp bends should be avoided in ignition leads primarily because weak points may develop in the insulation through which high tension current can leak. Question. Which of the following statements most accurately describes spark plug heat range? A cold plug is designed so that the insulator tip is reasonably short to hasten the rate of heat transfer from the tip through the spark plug shell to the cylinder head. Question. Refer to Figure 5. With power applied to the bus bar, what switch changes will allow the ignition exciter's test switch to function? Engine master switch and ignition switch. Question. When internally timing a magneto, the breaker points begin to open when the rotating magnet is a few degrees past the neutral position. Question. When using an electric starter motor, the current flow through it is highest at the start of motor rotation. Question. During which of the following obtained during magneto check at 1700 RPM indicates a short circuit between the right magneto primary and the ignition switch? Both 1700 RPM right 0 RPM, left 1700 RPM, off 0 RPM. Question. What test instrument could be used to test an ignition harness for suspected leakage? A high-tension lead tester. Question. A certain 9-cylinder radial engine used a non-compensated single-unit dual-type magneto with a 4-pole rotating magnet and separately mounted distributors. Which of the following will have the lowest RPM at any given range? Distributors. Question. Ignition check during engine run-up indicates a slow drop in RPM. This is usually caused by incorrect ignition timing or valve adjustment. Question. In the event A pneumatic start valve will not operate and the manual override must be used. The starter T-handle must be closed at scheduled starter dropout because the starter will overspeed at a given N2. Question: if staggered ignition timing is used, the spark plug nearest the exhaust valve will fire first.